I'm Nikita Liba, and I'm here today to talk about the Challenger Columbia explosion. Understanding the Challenger Columbia space shuttle explosion and the post-crisis that preceded it. It is a speech about informing the audience right here in front of me of the communication crisis that happened after both explosions of Challenger Columbia space shuttles. The thesis statement: the four values that compromise of NASA culture, safety, integrity, teamwork, and excellence, have contributed to the many successes. However, the aftermath of the two shuttle explosions shown a lack of organization, communication, non-transparency of information, and lack of follow-up that led to misinformation and many conspiracy theories. It took 73 seconds on January 28th, 1986. Last words: Roger, go at throttle up, 7 dead. Flight was successful until re-entry. Seconds before re-entry, on February 1st, 2003, Columbia shuttle disintegrated, killing 7. There are multiple perspectives on the monumentous events that took place. Challenger Columbia broke apart, the consequence being death of 14 astronauts and mountains of controversy. The FBI investigated to determine if the January 28, 1986 explosion was a result of sabotage. When the explosion of Space Shuttle Columbia happened 20 years ago on February 1st, 2003, the nation was shocked, threatening to destroy the image and confidence of NASA's wake of its poor handling that labored years to restore. According to the article Liftoff to Landing, NASA's public relations effort following the explosion of the Challenger in 1986 is considered an example of crisis communication failure. The president at the time for Challenger, Ronald Reagan, responds in his speech to the heightened emotions of the country in crisis. President Bush in Colombia was focused on the war in Afghanistan. There is no way to accept 7 people losing their lives in a crisis. Columbia disaster happened during the trouble of 9/11. President Bush in his speech was consoling a country still mourning the attack, focused on protecting the Texans from the debris of the shuttle. It was evidence in the case was the ethical issues, which were the lack of communication organization between members, managers, and poor safety culture. Adequate technology testing before launch was prevented. The primary ethical issue in this case was lack of property and safety culture. Although the cause of the disaster was a failure of the primary and secondary redundant O-ring seals in the shuttle's right booster, there was lack of information transparency. It was found out later that Challenger disaster could have been prevented because of failures in organizational check. Many of the engineers reported the issue, but because the deep-rooted and NASA culture of faulty decision-making communication, many people on the outside were unaware that the cultural values within NASA changed and that they were fair speaking out, lack of inspiring and motivating employee. 82 seconds after Columbia took off, a piece of insulting foam broke loose and hit the left wing. The engineers were investigating this. Although this incident was being investigated by engineers, no one knew about it. The engineers spent a great deal of time trying to get aerial pictures but did not. Subsequently, the hole allowed gas to bleed and causing the explosion. Both disasters, an immediate investigation was launched. On the first day of the Space Shuttle Columbia, some remains of the astronauts were found. It took 2 months to find the remains of the Challenger. The problem with Columbia was because the Challenger situation had become normalized and the problem wasn't fixed. The problems continued to be identified and repeated fixed and soon became accepted as the norm. NASA's culture became one of the procedural changes and changed the way decision is made, but the organizational culture of normalization of deviance remains the same. NASA's poor culture response caused some to believe that the Columbia crash occurred during the upcoming war in Iraq. One of American astronaut was the first Israel-born astronaut. He piloted a fighter jet that bombed Iraq's nuclear reactor. The destruction of Challenger and Columbia happened due to lack of communication, organizational responsibility, and crisis communication. The four values that comprise of NASA's culture, safety, integrity, teamwork, and excellence, have contributed to many successes. However, the aftermath of two shuttle explosions showed a lack of organizational communication, non-transparency of information, lack of follow-up that led to misinformation, and many conspiracy theories. The space agency must fix its flaws with its organizational culture, or may be forced into an inevitable position in relying on crisis communications to protect its image and reputation. References: Engel 2014, Kaufman 2005, Martin and Boynton LA 2005, Space Shuttle Challenger Disaster Wikipedia, Space Shuttle Columbia Disaster Wikipedia, and Space Shuttle Challenger Explosion 2001. Thank you.